Gizmo Ventures. And of course, I have with me Stephen Kusuma, who has been really the backbone for the operation for the venture plan competition. Thank you for being here. So just a quick update, and that is we're done with round two as of yesterday. We have round three starting next week, and it's split into two sessions. Round three is on November 12th. We'll have five different companies. You'll receive an email. You received one yesterday. You'll receive another one probably today about that. But it's on November 12th. There's five companies presenting. 12-minute pitch, 12-minute Q&A, and then on the 17th, a 12-minute pitch, 12-minute Q&A. And then we will announce the winner for the overall competition on the 18th of November. It's been a journey. I hope you guys have been enjoying it. I know I've been getting a lot of compliments from a lot of people, especially on the webinars. They've been really high class, highly valuable for everyone, and this would not be any different. Rich is a sales leader. He's been an executive for. I'll let him introduce himself, but he's been an executive for FedEx for many years. And right now, he's been helping a lot of companies, anywhere from startup all the way to companies in the 50 to $70 million in revenue. So there are no other updates, except I hope to see you all at the finals, which is the 12th and the 17th of November. Um, uh, Rich, you think we could share the deck with them afterwards too?
Absolutely.
All right. So, Rich, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, JJ and Stephen. Good morning, everybody. So here's a quick introduction on me. I own a consulting company here in Orange County. That is Sales Velocity Advisors. We're offering consulting and fractional leadership services. So I think everybody knows what a consultant is. Fractional leadership, that's a fancy word for part-time, right? Helping companies on a part-time basis, but as, of course, an independent contractor. As JJ mentioned, I work with a lot of small businesses. Here you see it's 5 million to 50 million. I've worked with startups. I've worked with companies up close to $500 million from a consulting standpoint. My prior life, I'm an ex-corporate athlete. I worked at FedEx for 30 years in a variety of positions. 17 of those 30 years, I was VP of sales at FedEx for the Western US. A lot of fun, great company. Departed there about 4 years ago and then started my own consulting practice. And on a personal note, I'm married for 31 years with my wife, Jody, and we have 3 adult daughters. Lived in Orange County since 1999, originally from the East Coast. So kind of traveled at least the US, right? Moved around a bit. So for today, sales strategies for startups, right? And I recognize that depending on your individual situation, you're in a different place, right? You could be at the beginning of that startup journey. You could be in the middle. You could be, towards the end from a funding standpoint and in scaling the business. So my comments and my counsel will be more general, but just understand that I'm trying to provide a message to a very eclectic group of business leaders and executives. So growth, that's what everybody is focused on, right? So how do you grow your business? And what are some things that are perhaps limiting factors, right? In the startup community, a big limiting factor could be capital. You need capital to scale the business. And once you have some level of funding, it's like, well, sequentially, what comes next? Sales and marketing, that's all about revenue, and you need that to grow, but you've got to do it in a smart way. So in talking with the startup businesses, it's really about where are you in your growth journey? Are you at the point where you are towards the beginning? Maybe it's you as the founder. Maybe you've got a partner or two. There's no sales team. You are the sales team, right? So you've got situations like that. And then there's other situations where it's like, no, we're further down the road and we have, we're ready to hire our first sales. or maybe you have a couple of sales reps and you want to hire a sales leader, right? So we'll talk about all of those things. But again, regardless of where you are in your startup journey, you're always focused on growth and scaling the business and how to best do that. So what's holding you back? We talked about some of those things, right? And it could be everything from funding, it could be finding the right talent. There's lots of things that might be holding you back. What I want to talk about today, though, is specific to best practices. And when it comes to you should be focused on. So first things first, right? And for any business, to be successful, you have to have a compelling value proposition. And you've got to be able to deliver on it consistently, right? You could have a great product, great service. If you can't execute, you're in trouble. There's no way you're going to be able to scale your business and survive, never mind thrive. So from a sales point of view, you've got to have a compelling value proposition. Why pick you versus the competition? What is it about your product or service that sets you apart? What are those differentiators, right? So you've got to have something that's compelling that you can offer out in the marketplace. Everything starts from there. From a sales point of view, and I've done it my whole life, you want to represent a company that's got a very strong value proposition that is very compelling. Then you're playing from a position of strength as a sales executive, and you represent a company like that. So value prop is number one. Number two, question to ask yourself, do you have the right people on the sales team? Now, again, depending on where you are in your startup journey, if you don't have a dedicated sales rep or two, then it's on you and or your partners to be that brand ambassador, that salesperson. Not everybody's wired to be good at sales. And what I would suggest that you do if you don't have a dedicated sales team and you're not ready for that, you really need to look at the folks that are currently within the company and who is the best suited to represent your brand, to go out there and talk to prospective customers and really promote your product or service. And so looking at you and your partners, if you have partners, some might be better suited to that than others. And my recommendation would be is to play to your strengths. If this is something that you or your partners are not good at, representing the brand and being fun and prospective customers, then perhaps that person or persons doesn't do the sales piece, and those that are better at this are the ones that are focused on it. If you have salespeople on your team, the question I would ask you to really reflect on, do you have the right people in these roles? And what I mean by that is this. To be successful in sales, the best salespeople, those that are truly hunters, they have the following attributes. Very strong ego drive, extremely competitive, money motivated, great business acumen. They're disciplined with their time in terms of where they spend it and who they spend it with, right? They're a great communicator. They're able to engage and really nurture relationships with all types of buyers. We're all different. You have different personality types. You want a salesperson that can quickly acclimate and adapt their approach based on the buyer personality, right? Talking to someone like JJ, who is more of a process mindset guy, versus talking maybe to somebody like me, who is more of a relationship collaborator type person. We're both good at what we do, but just different personality types. JJ wants facts and figures. For me, I'm looking at things more from the standpoint of, value proposition and messaging to customers and prospects. So again, having the right people on your sales team is so critical. And, this starts with hiring that ideal candidate, somebody that is, you have to determine what that is. What are you looking for? And then doing interviews and perhaps even using objective assessments, right? That give you more of a 360 view of the person that you're hiring. So this part's critical. You get strong value proposition and the right people. If you put those two together and you're definitely positioned for success. So beyond this, what's the next step? Well, your marketing and sales messaging, it's got to be in alignment. And everybody in the company has to be able to articulate it with customers and prospects. So what do I mean by that? Well, we see it all the time, right? You go on somebody's website and the way they're promoting themselves is X. And then you engage with the sales rep and what they're telling you is Y. So X versus Y. Well, that creates confusion for prospective customers. It's like, I thought you did this, but what you're telling me is you do that. So I'm confused. And you don't want confusion. Everybody in the company has to have very clear and consistent messaging. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is why you should choose us. So you got to stay on message, right? I mean, it's no different with politicians. They preach this all the time. Stay on the message. Don't deviate from that. Be consistent in what you say and what you do. So this part is crucial. And I know some business owners look at marketing and sales as the same thing, and that's not entirely accurate. I would say to you that marketing and sales are two sides of the same coin. Marketing is about brand, your positioning in the marketplace, your messaging. It's attracting prospective customers to your company. Whereas sales is taking that attraction, that interest from prospects and is converting that into a customer. And ideally a customer that you retain over an extended period of time. So they need to work together in tandem, but they are separate and distinct. So just please keep that in mind when you're thinking about marketing and sales, and also when you're hiring people to help you in these areas if you don't have inside expertise within your company. Okay, next up. So whether you have a sales team or you are the chief salesperson and business owner, you need some metrics. There needs to be some goals that you set for yourself and or set for the team. And that really comes down to what are the key activities that are going to help you grow your business, right? So that could be weekly goals, monthly goals, quarterly goals, annual goals, everything from how many sales calls are you going to make in a given week? How many presentations are you going to give via Zoom or face-to-face? How many proposals are you going to generate, right? Setting targets for yourself. In terms of prospects that you identify, how many do you need to hit the revenue goal target that you set for yourself? So you've got to have goals that are specific and measurable, right? And ones that make sense that are going to, again, move the needle, help you grow your business. At the same token, you want to make sure that not only are they specific and measurable, but there's some level of accountability, right? So if you've got a sales team and you've assigned goals, how are you measuring and monitoring and coaching to that? And if they're goals for yourself, where's the personal accountability, right? So having goals, having them documented, tracking how you're doing vis-a-vis the goal, having some level of accountability, coaching that goes with it is absolutely critical. Okay, along that same line, you need to have a CRM system. You should be tracking all customer prospect engagement, not just with sales, but really anybody that's interacting with customers and prospects, right? So one common system. And there's a lot that's out there. I know Salesforce is the big provider. Frankly, for startup, Salesforce is, I think, over-engineered and too expensive. There are other CRM systems out there that are much more economical that would serve purposes for you in the short term, be that HubSpot or others. So, but definitely having a CRM system and creating dashboards which can track these performance metrics we just talked about and track your pipeline is so critical, because really your pipeline, I mean, when you look at prospects and what you're forecasting the close of the next 90 days, 180 days, that's your revenue forecast. I mean, you've got to have a forecast. You need to know where you're going, right? Otherwise, any path will do. So You definitely need to make that investment. It doesn't need to be an expensive investment. And you need to be disciplined. Everybody in the company utilizes the CRM system, at least those that are customer facing. Okay, next. Again, this particular piece may speak to a company that has a sales team more so than just an owner and maybe a partner that are working in tandem, right, as they try to scale. But ideally, you're utilizing some standardized selling process or methodology. And there's a lot that's out there. It could be Sandler, could be spin selling, integrity selling. All these are structured sales or selling methodologies that are used to help you move a prospect through a sales cycle, right? From the beginning is identifying there's a need for your product or service, and then the end point is getting to yes, where they say yes, I'll do business with you. And so there's different selling methodologies that are out there that'll help you move through a sales cycle. But you need to think about it. If you, from a process mapping standpoint, what does that look like from the time you identify a prospect till you get ideally a yes from the customer. So wherever you pick is not as important as that you pick something and that everybody is utilizing a similar process. It helps you from a common language standpoint. It also helps you when you're utilizing a CRM. It helps you map opportunities in the pipeline, right? For example, if I was to say to you, let's say I'm the sales leader and I'm like, well, where are we with this particular prospect? Well, we're in the negotiation stage. There's a 75% probability that we're going to close this business in the next 30 days. Terrific. So I know what that means, as opposed to, yeah, they're interested. I think they're going to do business with us. Okay, well, what does that mean? They're interested. You think they're going to do business with us? You think they're going to buy? When? This lifetime or the next? And this, this happens in big companies and in small companies, right? So, pick whatever works for you, but there's absolutely a lot of value in having this in place. Compensation. I said earlier, you got to have a great value prop that's compelling and deliver on it consistently, right? That's like your number one objective. Your number two objective, make sure you've got the right people on the team, respective to selling and representing your brand. I would tell you that the third most important thing is the comp plan, because if you want to grow your business in a profitable manner, grow and scale your business in a profitable manner, right? Your compensation plan has got to be aligned to your overarching sales strategy, your overarching business strategy. And it should be driving the desired behavior. And I find so often this is not happening in small businesses. So let me give you an example. Very common, be it a startup company or somebody who's a little bit further down the road, that 80% or more of their revenue is coming from existing customers. And sometimes it's coming from very few existing customers, right? And that's dangerous, because if you lose one of those accounts to a competitor, it could be game over for the business, right? So, obviously you don't want that. So you want to diversify, and you want to be bringing in new business, new customers, right? Okay, great. So how do you incent that behavior? As you're growing and you're getting traction, let's say you've got $1 million a year in revenue from existing business. Terrific. And hopefully, depending on what your product or service is, you've got an ongoing revenue stream from those customers, right? That's wonderful. You want to compensate your salespeople or yourself, right? But your salespeople or salesperson for that ongoing revenue stream. But you also want to incent that sales rep or that sales team to go out hunting for net new customers. So how do you do that, right? Well, one of the ways that you do that is you put a premium on new revenue from new customers. Let's say you're paying, 5% of every dollar that comes in for your existing customers? Well, hey, maybe for net new business, net new customers, you pay a premium. You pay at 7%. You pick your percentages. 2% for existing customers and 5% for new customers. When you do that, if you have the right people on your sales team, they're like, okay, I'm going to get paid 2x for every new customer I bring on board, the revenue I get from them, versus this other rate. Well, I'm really going to target those new customers. So it's not that hard to incent the rep to do what you want them to do, right? To make sure that your compensation is aligned to your business strategy, your sales strategy. But you need to think through what you want that behavior to be. Another example is profitability. You've got companies that, some products have better margins than others, right? So, if you want your reps to sell everything, you need to compensate them appropriately. However, for higher margin products, again, maybe you put some type of accelerator in place where there's a real motivating factor for them to focus in on those higher margin products. At the end of the day, if your sales compensation is aligned to your strategy and it's driving the right behavior, that means you're growing profitably, right? If that's your strategy, you're growing profitably. Pay your salespeople. Don't cap their commission. And drive the right behavior, and that'll help you grow your business. Now, assuming you have a salesperson or a sales team, you need to train them. There needs to be an onboarding program, right? Something. And again, that could be an onboarding program, could be shadowing you for a couple of days, their first week on the job, right? But in terms of training, the question becomes, if you invested in having a standardized way of selling, right? A selling methodology, whatever that training is. Let's say you went to Sandler or you went through integrity selling. Do the same thing with a sales rep or sales reps. As you add them on, you have to think about, what's that onboarding experience look like? When that employee shows up day one, that sales rep, right? What should I have prepared? What should I prepare, to do that first week? And that's everything from here's the expectations for the job, right? Here's your job duties and responsibilities. Here's the performance metrics that we track. Here's your goals for that, right? Here's your revenue goal, for the month, for the quarter, whatever that looks like. Here's the compensation plan. Here's the customers or the target prospects we want you to go after. Here's your laptop. Here's our CRM system. And so, you preparing in advance and providing some type of structure and fence posts, so to speak, is so critical. You don't want to wing it. And unfortunately, that's what happens a lot of times. And I get it in a startup environment, right? Everybody's wearing multiple hats. I totally get it. But if you're going to invest in a full-time salesperson, or you need to have some level of structure in place if you want them to be successful. And you set the tone from the day that they start. What I also find, though, as you're going through the interview and selection process, candidates are going to ask you questions. They're going to want to know, okay, well, what's the onboarding look like? What's the performance expectations? What's my territory look like? What do you expect of me? I mean, these things are going to come up. What's the comp plan look like? So you have to be prepared when you're doing the interviews with this information, but you also need to go through it again once you hire somebody, right? Once they come on board. It's so important. You definitely want to start off on the right foot. Now, when you're at the point of scaling your business and you've got a couple of sales reps, I highly recommend that you invest in a full-time sales leader. Now, I'll be the first to tell you, I work with a number of clients that the sales leader is the business owner and or the CEO. That's typical. It just is, especially under $50 million a year in business. At what point should you add a full-time sales leader? I really think it comes down to a time investment. If you're finding that you're spending 20 or 25% of your time involved with a sales team in a given week, a given month, think about what that's preventing you from doing as it relates to running the business. Right? I mean, your role as a CEO or as an owner is to run the business, not to be in the business day to day. And I recognize in a startup environment, it's the dynamics are very different. But again, we're talking about growing and scaling. At some point, you need to add that full-time sales leader or a fractional sales leader, right? Somebody that can take on the responsibility of coaching and developing your sales team, which frees you up to do other mission critical things as you grow your business. So highly recommend this, and when's the right time? Every business is different. At some point, if you have one sales rep, you can get away with it, maybe even two sales reps. So when you start going down the road of 3, 4, 5 sales reps, you need to get a full-time leader. And that full-time leader really needs to be a great coach, because the best sales leaders are really focused on coaching. And sales is different than most other functional areas. Sales reps are not plug and play. They need you to be hands-on. So if you're the business owner or CEO, you need to be hands-on with that sales rep or those sales reps. If you got a dedicated sales leader, the same thing. And I don't mean micromanaging. I just mean that they need your level of engagement. Remember, sales owns revenue. They own your prospects and your customer relationships, right? So you want to be closely engaged. And the more investment that you make in coaching and developing them, again, assuming you've hired the right people, investing in coaching and development is going to help them achieve their full potential. And that's a benefit to you, to your company, to your customers, and to the individual employees. So really critical. Okay, I know I just downloaded a lot. Like, oh my gosh, are you out of your mind? We've got so many things we're thinking about. How are we going to do all this? So it's like, where do we begin? And as I say here, getting started is really the hardest part. So what I wanted to do is just give you a takeaway slide, right? It's the money slide, as I like to say. And it's 5 steps to sales success. If you do these 5 things, you're going to position yourself very well to be successful as you grow and scale your business, right? So number 1, as I mentioned earlier, your sales strategy should be aligned to your brand and your unique value proposition. That's just so critical. Your value prop, your brand, how you're different than their competition, why somebody should buy from you versus the other guys, right? So your strategy's got to be aligned to that brand and unique value proposition. Secondly, you've got to have the right people in the right roles. And, that's for any position, not just sales, right? But for sales reps, and if you have a sales manager or thinking about hiring one, you've got to have the right folks. You've got to look, it's all about talent, right? Think about it from a sports standpoint. Why some teams are consistently successful when others aren't. And I would tell you, it comes down to the talent. Sure, you can have folks that are overachievers. That's great. But you'll never, ever be able to grow and scale your business if you've got an average sales team. It's just not going to happen. Third, your sales performance metrics and your CRM system, you got to have them in place. You got to coach to them. And if you don't have any sales reps, look in the mirror. Hey, buddy, you missed your numbers this month. You got to step it up, right? So, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm serious. That's what you have to do. Number 4, have a documented selling process that you're utilizing in coaching, even if it's self-coaching. How do you move somebody from a prospect to a customer? There are milestones along the way. What does that look like? How do you conduct a sales call? There's a sequence from gaining rapport to asking discovery questions, delivering or offering up, the solutions that you can provide, overcoming any objections, and getting a commitment, getting a close, hopefully, right? And then finally, your comp plan, it's got to be aligned to your sales strategy, and it has to reward the right behavior. If you get these 5 things right, you are well positioned to grow and scale your business. So with that, JJ, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And I don't know if you have any questions in the chat box. And if we don't, we can open it up to Q&A.
Thank you very much. Anyone with a question? Q&A, audio, or even you can type it. Either way. No questions. Come on, somebody has to have a question. All right, so I have a question. Let's start with that.
Softball.
um,
I know how you are.
thank you. So what about, and you guys can still, okay, so there are questions coming in. But you talked about Sandler and others. So do you recommend that a startup or even a more mature company would put their salespeople through a Sandler type program?
Yes. It doesn't have to be Sandler. I just reference
Right.
that because
Yeah. Yeah.
and this is what I see a lot of times. There's a couple of different scenarios with companies that are under 50 million. Typically, there hasn't been a standardized training program that all the salespeople have gone through. It's been very haphazard. Yeah, this person went to a seminar, this one went to a 2-day class, whatever it might be, and it's different philosophies and different selling methodologies, and there's no coaching. There's no, what ends up happening. You go to a class, or you take this webinar, you read a book. Nobody's coaching you and reinforcing the skills that you learned, so you forget it. It's like when you go to those motivational conferences, right? Back in the day when we used to do it in person, right? You go
Yeah.
to these things and you're all pumped up and like, oh, this is great. And you take a lot of notes, right? And then you never look at it again and you
Yep.
forget about it. So that's why, most investments with training, regardless of the size of the company, most investments really are get you nowhere because there's no reinforcement of the skills that are taught. And that's why coaching is so important. Whether if the coaching is you as the CEO, the owner, coaching the reps because you're too small to have a dedicated sales leader, or if it's just you, or there's two of you, and like, hey, we're both selling, we're just at the beginning of this journey. I think having some level of development where you're both approaching a sales call, and you're approaching the journey from prospect to customer in the same way. I do think that's really important because there's milestones, right? I mean, from the time that somebody hits your website or introduced to a potential customer, there's a journey that you and the buyer, you as the seller, you and the buyer are on. And there's milestones to that journey. And every company might look a little bit different, right? But there's got to be common language, and the CRM can help you, right? The CRM can help you track these relationships. Because you're at different stages. It's like, well, hey, we just had a discovery call. Okay, well, you're on the left-hand side versus, oh no, I just did a presentation to the business owner and his executive team. Wow, okay, you're further along in this sales process, right? So it's so important to know where you are, to have a common language, and for everybody to be to utilize it, JJ.
All right, good. I'm going to ask another one. There are 5 questions in the Q&A, but I'm going to ask another one. What about, again, this is what I run into, and you have a better answer for everybody because that's your world. You really talked about the KPIs and the CRM and the metrics. Everybody's going to ask or asks me all the time. So which metrics? What metrics are we tracking? Are we tracking how fast we close a deal? Are we tracking? So what are maybe some examples of important metrics? I know every business is different. If you want, maybe you can, give an example of an existing business that, or some business that you've worked with, maybe with a couple of 3 metrics that you track.
To me, the most important metric is your pipeline, respective to prospects and what those prospects represent from a revenue standpoint, right? So to me, your sales pipeline, your prospect pipeline, that's your forecast. It's your forecast, your revenue forecast. And so, you've got to be able to track that. Typically companies will either set monthly or quarterly goals. And so therefore, if I know going into a new quarter, like for example, we're like the second month of Q4 is right now. So let's say my goal for the quarter is, I don't know, $250,000, right? I'm a sales rep and my goal is $250,000 for the quarter. Okay, great. So where are you? Well, I've closed $50,000 so far. Terrific. You got another 200 to go, right? And you got to get it by the end of December. So what's in your pipeline? So you look at your pipeline, what you're saying you're going to close in the next 90 days, and there's only $150,000 in the pipeline. Well, you're not going to make your number. It's not going to happen. So what are you going to do? I mean, because you got to step it up, right? So you begin with the end in mind. It's like, here's my goal, and here's what's in my pipeline. I'm going to fall short. So I got to step it up. What's stepping it up look like? I gotta increase my activities, right? I'm going to be dialing for dollars with prospects. I'm going to get super aggressive with anybody who's in the pipeline that maybe I'm saying it's not going to close until 2021. I'm going to see if I can accelerate some of those decisions. Can we maybe move some of that into 2020? I got to figure out where I'm going to get an extra $50,000 in revenue. Not only that, I got to make sure that I can close what I say I'm going to close, right? Because you have that, AJ, you have this pipeline creep that comes in, and sales reps are great at this. It's like, I'm going to get it by the end of the year. Really? Okay. Well, tell me, where are you in the sales process?
Right. Okay.
It's going to close by the end of December. If you're not in like presentation, negotiation, review, it's probably not going to happen. It's just not, and again, every business is different, right? And you talked about that. What's the velocity of the deals? In some cases, it's quick. You're closing stuff, a typical prospects in the pipeline, 30 or 60 days. Other companies, it could be a year long, and normally the bigger the value of the deal, the longer the sales cycle is, the longer that, that's what the way it works. I've got clients that, an average sales cycle could be 12 to 18 months. I've got others where it's 60 to 90 days. It just depends on what they're selling.
Okay. This is actually great because I can tell you for a fact, especially on the startup side, they're not thinking pipeline, they're not thinking budget, they're not thinking a goal. They're thinking, can I just sell anything? can I just make a sale? So it's really good. Is the sales cycle something that you track, and can you do anything about the sales cycle in general?
I think you can. There's specific activities that should take place. So let me, and I know we're throwing out a lot of different terms.
Right.
So I'd say things like sales cycle. I'm thinking about it specifically from the concept of a qualified opportunity. So a qualified prospect, a qualified opportunity. So in CRM systems, you've got an opportunity tab, right? An opportunity section. And so from the time that you've got what's a qualified prospect? Somebody who's interested in your product or service, right? They've expressed however you have qualified that opportunity. It's like, yes, this is a valid prospect who's got a need for our product or service. So they're qualified. Now, the question becomes, all right, they're qualified. So we start there. What's the first step once we've qualified it? Discovery process. I need to understand, what's the pain, what's the need that my product or service can help you meet? What's the decision-making process? Who's involved in that? What's the budget to buy? What's your timeline for making the purchase? So that's all part of the discovery process, right? Really getting into the weeds, asking open-ended questions, and validating what you think you've heard with the buyer to make sure that you're, yes, this is what I
Okay.
heard. Is this accurate? Yes, it is. So once you've done that, so that's the first step, but that takes time, right? You can't always get to all those answers on one sales call. The next step is, really it's some level of presentation, proposal, or demonstration, right? That's the next step. Okay, this is what you've told me. This is what I've heard. Is this accurate? Great. This is what I believe is the appropriate solution. This is how it works. And I'd like to move forward, be it a proposal, a presentation, or a demonstration. So then they say yes, the prospect says yes, you've advanced to the next stage. You've gone from discovery to presentation, proposal, demonstration, right? So then you've got that piece. The third piece, assuming you continue on this continuum, would be some level of negotiation review, right? It's a contract, negotiating terms, whatever that looks like, overcoming any objections they may have, and then finally, it's closed. Hopefully won. Sometimes it's lost. So that's a very simple four-step process: discovery, some level of demonstration, right, with a presentation, proposal, or a demo, negotiation, review, and then closed, won, lost. So to me, you can map that in CRM, JJ, in your opportunities tab. And as you're advancing the sales cycle, there should be a time factor, based on the customer tells you what their timeline was, right? So based on, if you're advancing in this sales process, the sales cycle, you're getting closer to the wind, closer to the decision day, right? So, and then you have to just calculate what's the probability we're going to get this business. So typically the probability goes up as you advance in the sales cycle. Might be maybe that was a little too granular for you, but I try to keep
no,
it simple.
that was perfect. I think everybody got a lot of value out of that too. Okay, so if you can open the Q&A, I don't know if you could see it, but if you hover over the bottom of the Zoom window, it should show Q&A 8 with an 8 number of 8. You click on that.
I am doing that right now.
All right. So first question, you can read it from HD. Yeah.
I may have to stop the share. Let me do that. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Stop the share. Okay. For startups with little cash, what are different ways to compensate sales? Okay. So typically, if you're hiring a hunter, the mix between base salary and variable compensation bonus is 50-50. So, one of the ways you can navigate this is it's really, it's a low base and it's a high variable, right? But you really need to incent that behavior. And so you've got to make it really attractive. I mean, what you're seeing, at least in Southern California, for hunter sales reps that can do a great job, your typical OTE, which is your target earnings, right? On target earnings is about $100,000 to $125,000. So let's say it's 100 grand. So 50K would be a base, 50K would be a variable. If you can't afford a 50K base, you can go lower. What some companies do is they'll do a draw to commission. So they'll pay, more, a mix of base salary and draw towards, them earning out, against their variable. So there's different ways to structure it. But, look, I'm here to tell you, you got to be really careful, because I know some very few, but some businesses want to do like all variable, all bonus, all commission. And, you get what you pay for. Somebody who's going to take on that level of risk, I don't know that that's necessarily the right person you want representing your brand, because they're chasing the almighty dollar. And, you can invest all this time and getting them up to speed, and then they're gone the next day. And I don't think you want to do that.
All right. When to start to hire a salesperson? That's the next two questions.
Well, and JJ, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, right? So there's a couple of different approaches. And I think it depends. It depends on a couple of factors. First and foremost, do you have the budget? Do you have the money to hire a full-time salesperson, right? And if you don't, there's other avenues that you could pursue. You could do an independent rep, right? Or meaning they're selling for other companies, not just yours, and they're typically 100% commission. However, they're not totally focused on selling your product or service, but you could do that. You could work with a third-party company that does appointment setting, right? They'll do some level of cold calling, prospecting, and they'll still schedule appointments for you with qualified prospects. I think that's a good place to start, JJ. I know you and I just talked about that yesterday. I think it's a good place to start because, look, cold calling is time consuming, right? If you're running the business, you don't have time to be dialing for dollars every day. So let somebody do that for you. I mean, a typical company will make a couple hundred calls a week and maybe schedule, 2 or 3 appointments for you on qualified prospects. And then, you go out and you bring home the business, right? So that might be a good place.
Usually you're paying per qualified lead or maybe per appointment or something like that, right?
Like that. I mean, it's a heck of a lot less expensive than hiring a full-time employee, and
Right.
you don't have to manage them. The third-party company does, right? So, I think it just really depends on where you are. If you have the money, if you can afford to bring in a full-time salesperson, do it. If you don't, then look at hiring an independent rep, or look at doing, lead generation company, or some not lead generation, appointment setting company, or some mix of that. There's a lot of different ways to get there.
So just to clarify that for everyone, because there is lead generation, which is one thing. Appointment setting is the next level. So it's a little bit more than just give you a bunch of leads. They're more qualifying that lead, is it?
Yes, because when you're appointment setting, either you provide a list of suspects for them to go after, or they can procure a list for you, based on your target, market, right? Target customer, target industry, whatever it might be. Yeah, lead gen, you're right, JJ, that's a whole different thing. Because I mean, those are suspects. Appointment setting to me are qualified prospects. So that's a better ROI, right? They're both important.
Okay, all right. So we have James.
Yeah. So how do you find top salespeople? Industry trade referral? Okay. Yeah. Great question. And it's funny because boy, how things have changed in the last 9 months since the pandemic, right? You go back to early part of this year, unemployment was less than 3%, right? Southern California. And the demand for sales talent, really good sales talent, was off the charts. And now obviously it's a little bit different, which is good, I guess, in a way that, that there's more folks on the market, but don't fool yourself. Great salespeople don't stay free agents for long. In terms of how to find them, I think, yes, referrals are great. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn and doing some level, whether it's posting the job on LinkedIn, doing some data mining. I like to go after passive candidates, people who aren't looking for jobs. What's nice about salespeople is they love to brag, the good ones. So you go on their LinkedIn profile and you'll see things for top salespeople of like, big plan the last 5 years, President's Club, won all these awards, and you need to validate that they're not just BSing, right? But they really stand out. But in terms of hiring, the first thing is you need to create that ideal candidate profile. What are the attributes of the person that's going to represent your company? I talked earlier about sales DNA and the attributes you should have. But beyond that, representing your particular product or service, what are you looking for? Because you want a couple of things. First and foremost, you want skill fit, right? You want somebody who truly has sales DNA. Secondly, you want culture fit for your business. That's so critical, especially for startups. Because I mean, heck, there could be just 5 people, and this is going to be, employee number 6. So they got to fit into your culture, and they have to be comfortable in that startup environment. It's not for everybody. And then the third thing is industry experience. Now, what I find fascinating, and JJ, I think we've talked about this, many companies start with industry experience first. Then they look for, skill fit and culture fit. And that's a mistake. And the reason why that's a mistake is you can't teach somebody to be a great salesperson if they don't have that true sales DNA. You just can't. And if they're not a good culture fit, they can tank your company, especially if you're in a startup mode, right? So, you've got to focus on skill and culture first. And if you can get the industry piece, that's a nice to have. But in my opinion, that's number 3 on the list. So again, you hire to those 3 things: skill, culture, and industry. And then beyond, and you have your ideal candidate profile. I think using things like Indeed and LinkedIn they're inexpensive, and the better profile you create, the better resume response you'll get back. And then you have to screen. You got to screen it. You got to screen the candidates. And I would, hey, do yourself a favor. Have some type of process in place to screen the candidates, because you don't have the time or the bandwidth in most cases to be talking to, hundreds of people. You really need to get it down to about, 10% or less of the resumes that come in. And if you don't have the expertise to do it, supplementing your team with somebody that can help you in that regard, be it a recruiting company or someone like me specific to sales, that's also an option for you as well. But anyway, yeah, I mean, and then beyond that, like I said, you've got to have a foundation in place: compensation, CRM, performance expectations, a selling product. All that stuff has to be in place before you bring them on board. Otherwise, they show up, you're not prepared, and it's like amateur hour, and they're going to wash out in a couple of months.
All right. If you could read the whole thing, because some people can't see it. So if you could, yeah.
Okay. In today's SaaS business, when much uptake happens via marketing and self-service, even in B2B, how should one adopt the sales process, the buyer's journey? Okay. For example, Calendly, Zoom, etc. The average price is not 10K plus. We're looking at B2B sales with premium model for our sales and marketing enablement solution, using video conversation, using more of digital marketing. Yeah, in terms of converting, every business is different, right? And so, some companies that have a active, it's more of a digital marketing play, and they're doing, they have, hey, schedule a demo. And, JJ, you and I have done this. You get on there, for 15 minutes, they walk you through their platform, and then, you get the hard sell, right? So, as it relates to that, I still think you should have regardless of the business and how you engage with prospects and try to convert them, everything can be mapped out. There should be specific milestones in that buyer's journey, and you should be able to track that in your CRM system.
All right.
Should you hire one salesperson? Well,
So we have 4 attractions, right? So yeah.
Yeah, 4 attractions from 4 minutes. Okay, I don't know what not quite sure what the question is.
Yeah. So Ibrahim, can you come in with an audio question on that one, maybe towards the end, or clarify it? And you could do the anonymous question next.
I've heard of sales reps who secure the wrong type of business clients. If you have a product, wait a minute. If you have a product that relies on a business to be able to execute over the long term, what type of contingencies are reasonable to commission? For example, beyond just compensation for signups, compensation based on business clients that sustains and grows. And I'm not quite sure what the industry is, but this goes back to the compensation piece. I say this to business owners all the time. If your salespeople aren't selling the right things, that's on you. That tells me that you have created a compensation plan that's not in alignment to your strategy. So and first things first, understand that not all revenue is good revenue. Sometimes you need to kill product lines or service offerings because they're not profitable, and you may take a hit on revenue, but your margins will go up. And JJ, this is what you do, right? Sometimes you gotta. I think
this is margin. You can take margins.
So
margins are more important, right? So
well, Coca-Cola is a good example of this. They have I forget what they're calling it, something along the lines of like zombie killings. And what that means is they've got, I don't know how many hundreds of products that are out there. Some of them are just regional brands, and they're not contributing. And it's like we got to kill it like a zombie. You just got to kill it, right? And it's no different for startups. I mean, you may start in one spot in terms of a product or service offering, and over time you are able to expand into other products or services, other revenue streams. And what you started with, you end up killing, and you focus on other products or services that are more profitable. So if your compensation plan is aligned to your sales strategy, it should be incenting the right behavior. And again, if you have things that aren't profitable, there's things that you don't want your salespeople selling, why are you offering them? Don't offer them. They can't sell it if you're not offering the product or service. So if you don't want them selling it, then don't give. That should not be in their portfolio of products or services to sell. However, if you do want them to sell it, but you're looking to incent behavior that focuses on higher margin products or customers that are more attractive, then put a carrot out there to incent that behavior. Don't penalize them for selling the products and services that you have in your portfolio. Incent them at a higher rate to go after the target customers or specific products or services that are going to drive the behavior that you want. That's the right way to go. Believe me, if you have the right people in these sales roles and they're highly competitive and money motivated, right? Another way to say that is great salespeople are coin operated. So you have to incent that behavior. So show them the money, right? Show me the money, show them the money, and incent the behavior accordingly. But keep it simple. Don't over-engineer your compensation plan. Salespeople, look, there's a reason they're in sales. I've been in sales my whole life. There's a reason they're in sales. So if you need an engineering degree to figure out how the compensation plan works, it's overcomplicated. Old VP at FedEx once told me, if you can't put it on a cocktail napkin, you can't write out your comp plan on a cocktail napkin, it's too complicated. So keep it simple and incent the right behaviors.
All right, next is from HD. Thanks for a really good webinar, Rich. What adjustments have you seen with sales processes during COVID time?
So I'll tell you what, it's been really interesting, and for many companies and salespeople in particular, they've struggled with adapting to this environment, being able to engage.
Yeah, we talked about yesterday.
It's really hard. I think for many of us, if we weren't Zoom experts, we certainly are now. And but yeah, it's more than just being an expert. It's like, how do you connect? Like, for example, for me, I'm talking to this universe of however many participants, right? And so it's just a camera and a light and a big screen Mac, right? But I'm trying to bring energy and enthusiasm to the conversation to engage you. You need salespeople that can do the same thing, but do it from a place of authenticity. So you've got to be able to navigate a remote virtual world. Number one. Number two, the conversations look different. They just do. I mean, people don't have time for BS. So you need to dial back the rhetoric, and those salespeople that can come across genuine and authentic, where it's like, hey, look, I would love for us to do business together, but I really need to understand what you're doing today and where you want to go, and if my product or service can help you get there. So, let's have a conversation and just explore if this is a good path for both of us. I think if you take that approach, then you're going to be fine. And then obviously, always do what you said you're going to do. Follow up on any commitments that you make, but hold the buyer accountable for commitments that they make as well. So, I mean, I would say from a sales process standpoint, is the sales cycle long? Probably when the pandemic first hit, the first couple of months, everything stopped, but it picked back up in June. And there's no expiration on this situation that we're all in. So buyers and sellers have had to adapt. And honestly, there's good and bad, right? I don't miss not having to get on a plane. I'm much more productive, being able to use Zoom versus face-to-face meetings. But it's starting to go back in the other direction, at least for me, maybe for you as well, JJ, and the others on the call. There's a blend here of some things are good virtually, some things are good face-to-face. From a selling point of view, I think an initial meeting, depending on the size of the opportunity, they want to see in person. They want to make that connection. And then you can continue in a virtual environment. And then when they're ready to make a final call, yes or no, you probably need to go back in there in person. Again, depending on the size of the prospect that you're talking about. So I think sales cycles have gotten a little bit longer. We're starting to see them shrink back. I think people have adapted. If you've got salespeople, hopefully you've been able to navigate coaching them in this environment, because it's a little crazy. It's not just the pandemic, it's social unrest, it's political upheaval, it's all kinds of stuff going on, right?
Yeah. So it's funny, I was just about to tell you that I think Abraham really needs your help, and then he posts, I need your help. So that was hilarious, actually. So that's his question here. We're already have 4 prospects. How to find a third-party company to help you close that contract?
Right. And that's, listen, I'd be happy to help if I can, or at least give you some counsel. That really, for this webinar and supporting my good friend JJ and Pismo Ventures, my role today was to give you some insights and perspectives on, sales strategies for startups. I really would love to see each and every one of you be successful aspirationally, for taking your companies to that the promised land, right? So, this was, and I'll make sure you get a copy of this deck in PDF format. I'll send that to you, JJ, after our Zoom meeting. My contact information is in there. I'll make sure that JJ can just forward it on, I guess, to everybody, however you're doing it. But I'd be happy to talk to you offline. And if I can help, great. And if I can point you in the direction of someone else that might be able to help, that's cool too. I'm really just looking to give back to the startup community and seeing what I could do to make a difference. And for better or worse, my whole life has been spent in sales and sales leadership. So I know a little bit about this. I don't know that I'm an expert, but I probably know more than the average person.
Okay, all right. So I'll forward the information to you so you can reach out to Abraham as well. So, all right. Any other questions? Audio, video, audio typed, any which way possible. All right. Maybe there aren't any. That was a lot of great information. About half an hour of Q&A only. That's really, really good. All right. So if we don't have any more questions, I'm going to thank you very much, Rich, for being here today. That was really very, very valuable. I learn things from you all the time, and today is no different. So thank you for being here. I'm sure everybody got a lot of value and insight from your expertise. Thank you, everyone, for being here as well. Again, don't forget, next week and the week after are 2 big days with the presenters being in the final. We have 10 companies. Please be there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Rich, thanks again. Talk soon.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.